Manufacturing jobs have been fleeing America since the beginning of the Reaganism experiment. Can we bring them back? Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We'll get back to putting our politics back together in just a minute. First, I want to talk about putting our economy back together. This is a fairly large issue. If you go back to the statistics that the Economic Policy Institute pulled together from current employment statistics, an analysis of the U.S. Census Bureau, et cetera, in 2018, the United States lost 1,005 factories. Over 1,000 businesses that did manufacturing went out of business, causing 216,000 people to lose their jobs. In 2017, we lost 782 factories, 50,000 people losing their jobs. In 2016, I'm working backwards here. 2016, we had 999 factories closed. 33,000 people lost their jobs. In 2015, it was 2,129 factories closed. I mean, this is just continuing. You can take these numbers all the way back to the 80s, when we began this giant neoliberal experiment of moving all of our manufacturing to low-wage, low-regulation countries. And Trump campaigned on this. This has been a Democratic point for years and years and years. Outside of the Clinton administration, Democrats have always generally been somewhat protectionistic, saying let's keep manufacturing here in the United States. There's a whole bunch of really good reasons for that. But Trump has been trying to do this by executive order and by fiat and stuff, and it has not worked, obviously. On the line with us is Robert Scott, Dr. Robert Scott, Rob Scott, PhD, Director of Trade and Manufacturing Policy Research at the Economic Policy Institute. EPI.org is their website. His Twitter handle is RobScott_EPI or Economic Policy. And Rob, welcome to the program. First of all, why has manufacturing gone offshore? Let's just start there.
Well, it's a combination of things. I think the most important, frankly, is that we let it happen. It's a policy of what I call malign neglect. And there are several pieces to this. The way we built our economy and the strength of that economy was through research. We let research lag. We used to spend upwards of 2.5–3% of GDP on research, much of it through the DoD, but that helped the commercial sector as well. Well, much of that money is gone. We've lost $200 or $300 billion a year in research. But the worst thing that we did was we allowed other countries, such as China, Japan, and Korea, to take advantage of us in several ways. The first and most important is they engaged in what's called currency manipulation. They bought up dollars, made the dollar more valuable, drove down the value of their currency, and they made everything that they exported to us cheaper and made our exports more expensive. So effectively, they subsidized their exports to the rest of the world, and really that's the key. They subsidized their exports to us. We let it happen. In doing so, they exported unemployment to us, and we lost, as I've shown in the paper which we're talking about, over 5 million manufacturing jobs and 91,000 factories since 1998 alone.
Wow, amazing numbers. So, Rob, how do we reverse this? What do we do to change this?
Well, we have to decide that we care. We have to decide that having a strong manufacturing sector matters. It matters because workers in manufacturing earn better pay. They have better benefits. It helps redistribute income in our society, creating more good jobs, especially for workers without college degrees. So that's why. What do we do? First of all, we have to attack that overvalued dollar. The dollar still is overvalued by, I'd say, 25 or 30%. We need to bring the value down. Several ways to do that. We can talk more about that in a moment. But we have to bring the dollar down to make our exports more competitive. That's the single most important thing we can do. On top of that, our tax policy encourages offshoring. Companies pay half or less of the tax rate if they produce a good offshore and bring it home and sell it here, rather than producing goods in the United States. Companies ought to be encouraged do the tax on, to produce more in the United States. So that's a simple thing we can do. This was made worse in Trump's Tax Act. That's where that 50% discount comes from. And after that, we've seen a huge surge in outsourcing in industries like pharmaceuticals. So get the dollar down, lower taxes, invest more in workers, in R&D. Those are the kinds of things that can rebuild our manufacturing economy.
Yeah. You said that there are ways to reduce the value of the dollar. What are those?
Well, the dollar was driven up, as I said, when foreign countries, foreign central banks bought up hundreds of billions of dollars a year in U.S. securities, principally in Treasury bills that built up demand for the dollar.
This is why China's sitting on $1 trillion worth of treasuries?
It's more like two or 3 trillion right now, and Japan has $2 trillion. It's about 20 countries. It's not just China. So we got to reduce demand for the dollar. One of the best ways to do that, there are several, but the simplest thing we can do is to put a tax on foreign purchases of U.S. dollars. There's a proposal that's been introduced by 2 senators, a bipartisan bill, introduced by Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and Josh Hawley of Missouri, and that would impose a tax on all new foreign purchases of U.S. assets. And think about that for a minute. It's a tax on investors, just those who happen to live abroad. So it generates tax revenues that we can spend at home on foreign investors, and that will drive down the demand for U.S. securities and demand for the U.S. dollar. And
I have read, Rob, that 1/7 of all U.S. business assets are foreign owned. If that's true, or any number like that, how would this affect that?
Well, when companies invest in the United States to produce goods, those are long-term decisions. So we're talking about a very small tax, maybe a quarter or 1/2% one time. It's a front-end tax. And that's not going to invest a business decision by a company like, say, BMW or Mercedes to build a factory here if they decided it's more competitive to build things in the United States. But it will deter people who are buying up, let's say, foreign exchange or treasury bills to hold for a few weeks or a few months. And so at the margin, we can reduce those high-frequency transactions and drive down the dollar without making us less attractive for foreign investors.
Right. I noticed that you didn't mention tariffs or other, barriers to trade, like Alexander Hamilton proposed in 1791, and we basically had until the 90s, as I recall. Do you think that that's too much of a blunt instrument these days?
I do, and one reason is that by imposing tariffs, what happens is in a modern economy with flexible exchange rates, the currency just moves in the opposite direction. So since Trump has imposed his tariffs on China, beginning in March of 2018, the dollar has gained about 13% in value. So essentially, that just makes imports cheaper, offsetting the effect of the tariff, and that's what the flexible exchange rate does. That's why the exchange rate is the most fundamental price in the international economy, and that's why we have to attack the exchange rate.
We just have about 15 seconds left, Rob, before we hit a hard break. What about specific Buy America rules for the federal government?
Absolutely necessary. We can create hundreds of thousands of those jobs that way.
And that law the Buy America Act was passed back in the 70s, wasn't it? I mean, it's still on the books. It's just the administration since Reagan have been giving waivers, haven't they?
They have, and in fact, it goes back to the Berry Amendment in 1930s, I think.
1930s. Amazing. Rob Scott, Dr. Rob Scott of the Economic Policy Institute, the Director of Trade and Manufacturing Policy Research. Rob, thank you so much for dropping by.